supporters, members of my biological family, and all of you who may be members of my political family, and our friends from the mass media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. You know that country where they say observed. It is my honor to add my voice to the words of welcome that have already been extended to all of you for this event that formally launches our campaign to seek the highest office of the Republic of Ghana, the presidency, by our contest to become the flag bearer of the NDC. Permit me to request us to begin this august ceremony by observing a 1-minute silence in honor of several distinguished Ghanaians who in recent months have gone into transition. They all served our great nation very well, and several of them also obtained international recognition for their selfless services to humanity. Permit me to mention just a few of them, namely our former Vice President, Kwesi Bekwemi Arthur, Honorable Mr. J.H. Mensah, Honorable Mr. K.B. Asante, Professor Atukwe Okai, the distinguished jurist Justice V.C.R.A.C. Crab, and our own international icon, Mr. Kofi Annan. To these noble personalities and others I may not be mentioning, who have excelled in public spheres, in various spheres of public life, let us jointly say, Ayeko, fare thee well, and may they all rest in peace. Shall we rise, please, in respect to them? Distinguished colleagues and friends, we are gathered here today to witness and support the public declaration of my candidacy for the NDC flag bearer position in the NDC's presidential primaries, which, as you all know, is a precursor to the 2020 national elections. At this stage of the national campaign that has unfolded within the NDC, observers may wish to note that presidential aspirants must concentrate their messages to a limited internal audience of only NDC mostly elected executives, totaling some 270,000 officers of the party. So while the general public and some in the mass media may be interested in some specific policy initiatives that the NDC under my potential leadership will espouse and promote, we must continue to underline the fact that the time for this larger discussion affecting Mother Ghana as a whole shall be after I have, by God's grace, been elected as the flag bearer of the NDC. For now, especially for our friends in the media, please indulge us if you find that we are focusing our messages mostly for the consumption of our primary target audience, which, as I've said, is the 270,000 NDC elected officers at the branch, constituency, regional, and soon to be conducted national levels, and who are eligible to vote for a presidential candidate. To discuss about the factors that have inspired me to consider a leadership position in Ghana's politics, let me share something that some of you may have heard already, which is the fact that I got enrolled as a member of Kwame Nkrumah's Young Pioneer Movement at the age of about 10 while I was in secondary school. And as a young pioneer, along with thousands of others, I benefited from what I consider an injection of some of the DNA, the ideological DNA of our first president, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. This went into my bloodstream and into my mind stream. Subjects such as nationalism, patriotism, ethics, civic responsibility, Pan-Africanism, the non-alignment movement, and Ghana's role in world affairs were some of the concepts that we imbibed at a rather early age. In my latter years, as a younger man, I became also a sympathizer of the then fairly radical changes that were taking place under the leadership of ex-President Rawlings, whose fundamental principles of probity, integrity, accountability, and transparency eventually attracted me into Ghana's public service and into what we call politics. And this I did, as you may know, from the guaranteed comforts of a potentially long and well-compensated life in international organizations. Those principles of the revolutionary era of the 1980s have since become the bedrock upon which the NDC party has evolved and continues to be guided today through the ideology of social democracy. But there is a general view held by many political observers that over the last 10 years or so, the NDC seems to have strayed significantly from those core values espoused by President Rawlings. And many NDC members have actually become enchanted with some of the aspects of the culture of our leading opponents, the NPP. For example, the monetization of politics, especially under the Kufuor era, has transformed Ghana's political practices to what some consider a very scary extent. Recently, many of us in Ghana were somewhat amazed, may have looked on helplessly, as some candidates for national office in the NPP party displayed what seemed to be open and wanton, exorbitant vote buying. We read about people buying buses for 275 constituencies. We also read about others wrapping large bundles of cash for distribution to their nearly 9,000 delegates. By some accounts, some delegates from the NPP National Delegates Conference went away. In fact, almost all of them, with amounts ranging from between 5,000 to 10,000 cedis from a single day's activity. And actually, it's therefore no wonder that I heard that recently when some students that were just about to graduate from one of our leading universities were subjected to an interview to find out what their career plans were, what kind of occupations they intended to pursue after leaving university. Some cited a new occupation called political party delegate as what they were aspiring to become. So while the NPP have unabashedly promoted their love for what they call property ownership, they have also at the same time sought to weaken the NDC's public appeal by carving out a number of populist slogans and social intervention initiatives aimed at cutting off some of the NDC's natural political base from the grassroots and from what we used to call the lumpen proletariat, by seeming to respond to the national malaise of poverty and unemployment through such initiatives as a school feeding program or expanding the national health insurance program that was actually begun under the Rawlings regime, and now the well-known free senior high school program. The otherwise rather elitist NPP party has done a good job, some might say, of eating into the NDC's traditional strongholds. The NPP therefore seems to have been quite successful, in some people's view, at appealing to those at the bottom of the socioeconomic pyramid and gaining their votes. This happened in 2016, even to the extent of appointing a minister for Zongo Affairs and Inner City Development, when for many, many years or even decades, it was the NDC that everyone knew had the higher appeal within the Zongo community. Meanwhile, although the NDC has done a wonderful job of undertaking a number of showpiece construction and infrastructure projects like airports and seaports, flyovers, world-class hospitals, and new universities, some might argue that many of these projects may have benefited or are likely to benefit thousands of middle-class users of airports and well-equipped hospitals, car owners who use our bridges and our roads, rather than maybe the millions of masses of the people whose needs may sometimes be somewhat different. So clearly, more introspection is needed within the NDC to enable us to become more effective in staking out our primary ownership of the agenda for empowering the millions of our population that are caught in the poverty trap and who naturally look to the NDC first for relief It's when they can't see relief coming from the NDC that some, I believe, may have turned to the NPP. But I think we all now know that even those who turned to the NPP in 2016 are regretting it and want to come back home. Nevertheless, it also seems that many NDC leading lights have also been caught up in a frenzy to imitate or compete with the NPP with respect to the love for ostentatious lifestyles and the scramble for individual financial prosperity at the expense of the public good. It is against this backdrop of what seems to be a national malaise, a growing social focus on wealth by any means, a complete drift in national prioritization, the abandonment of the public interest for the personal interest, the rising incidence of corruption in high places, that the Slugabra campaign team has developed a forward agenda we call FA, in short, to propose an alternative narrative for the NDC. The forward agenda, FA, takes its inspiration from Kwame Nkrumah's own famous words when he stated in discussing Ghana's national development and the issues of alignment and non-alignment, and I quote him, that we face neither east nor west, we face forward. Forward. Similarly, in the various choices that we need to make as a party, party in opposition, we need to find our way back to power. The FA mission is therefore not for the NDC to retreat into the dark, decrepit, and depressive defeat of 2016, but for NDC members to look forward with hope and expectancy towards the bright light of our revival, our regeneration, our restoration, our restitution, and the success that awaits us in 2020. For the FA team, the NDC's future does not include attempting to revive the cadavers and the carcasses of our ignoble, squandered defeat of 2016. However, over the past year or so, the FA team has been garnering a passionate and hardworking group of NDC members and other apolitical Ghanaians that are all determined to build an innovative, constructive, and decisive leadership that will foremost ensure that Ghanaians are lifted out of poverty and can compete with the best and brightest in the world. The forward agenda is ultimately not about social class, it's not about educational attainment, it's not about the possession of wealth or the capacity to make loud noises, but about the depth of the Ghanaian nationalistic motivation in our hearts, which ought to give us the conviction to continually place the interest of Ghana first and foremost. And admittedly, such inner motivation is not very easy to measure. In discussing my journey to political leadership, I must refer to various opportunities that I had through secondary school to university, at Chimota School for that matter, University of Ghana, Commonwealth Hall, and later to the United States and within the Ghanaian communities, both in Ghana and the United States, where I attempted to show various kinds of leadership, whether it was in Students' Representative Council matters, in university student administration, both in Ghana and in Ohio University, where I was president of the Foreign Students Association at a certain point. All these, I believe, have prepared me to serve humanity, to serve my nation, and to serve our communities. As you heard from my good friend, Mr. Cassidy, my experiences as a teacher in the classroom, as a farmer where more than 50, sometimes 60% of our population is engaged in the world of marketing and advertising, in the worlds of global communications, in the worlds of banking and finance, in selling as an ambassador, diplomacy, working in government, working as an elected officer of our own NDC party, heading church administrations, even becoming a university president, have cumulatively given me a very unusual combination of experiences, in many people's view, which ought to make me a good national leader based on the kind of teams that we can establish for us to work together to lead this nation. But for the NDC, it may be that, and some of you have received a flyer on this, so I will not go into the details, but NDC members in particular are often interested in the contributions that their potential leaders have made to the party. And so if you look at the flyer that has been given to you, you'll see what I've done from 1993, 1994, 1997, 1998, 2000, and on until now, with respect to various positions I've held within the party, all of which I believe have given me a very good insight into the challenges facing the party and the kinds of solutions that we should consider for strengthening our party in order for us to win 2020 elections. Again, I believe that newsletter or that leaflet given to you discusses my 7-point agenda for NDC, which include helping to build offices for our constituencies, which often meet in rather sorrowful buildings, the importance of creating national and regional business development committees to make our party more entrepreneurially minded and to strengthen the financial base of our party members, the importance of strengthening our youth, especially the men and indeed the women as well, with education, skills, job training, scholarships, and assistance with employment. The need to strengthen especially the women's wing of our party to make it as strong as it used to be when the December 31st women's movement used to be quite dominant in NDC women's affairs. The merits of creating a welfare committee and a welfare fund at the national, regional, and constituency levels to take care of those in our party that sometimes have various difficulties and can't manage it themselves. And of course, the importance of also creating a credit union as a financial institution in which the party itself can lodge its funds and other individuals within the party can also lodge funds to enable the party to have access to low risk and low interest capital to support ourselves and our members. And finally, the importance of a president and indeed a flag bearer having access or providing access to party members who wish from time to time to meet their leader, and which from the evidence of many former leading members of our party was not always the case, especially as people try to get into the Flagstaff House and they are stopped by protocol and national security, etc. So the problems of Ghana, I think, call for very innovative and courageous leadership, and in particular, the importance of networking the knowledge that is contained within Ghana and among Ghanaians in the diaspora. So I've also discussed in a number of other documents, and some of this will be found on our website, www.spiogabra.org, the issues of human capital development and management. How are you going to develop the human capital of Ghana? That's the most important thing. Once your human beings are developed, everything else is possible. Then from there, you get into managing your natural resources, which some people are exploiting and taking out of our country, and we don't even know how much gold and oil leaves our country. The importance of promoting agro-processing, because that's our natural resource, and moving into manufacturing and industrialization. The merits of sound financial intervention and financial inclusion, because money is what flows through an economy. The importance of education and the building of the same networks of knowledge, job creation, skills development, and employment, good governance, self-discipline and law and order, and also what one can do with regards to international collaboration and foreign partnerships, because Ghana is only one of more than 100 nations on earth, all of whom are fighting for various access to resources, capital, to markets, and to development. How do we compete in the global economy? Today, Ghana's economy seems to be bleeding almost to hemorrhaging levels, partly due to our excessive borrowing, our budget deficits, our relatively high inflation rates and interest rates, cost of capital, banks collapsing, people getting out of jobs, unemployment high for the youth. Meanwhile, the ordinary person whose savings are being squandered is being paid to pay the bill of those bankers and their directors who reportedly may be bailed out of their greed-induced crisis if the law doesn't take its course. Reports of chronic corruption in various spheres of public and private life continues to reach alarming proportions. So there are many reasons why Ghanaians may have to keep voting government out until the beautiful ones that Aiko Ahmad thought about in the 1960s are given a chance to right these wrongs. Unfortunately, I make bold to say that a few beautiful ones have been born, certainly during the Nkrumah era, and some were nurtured into adulthood under the Rawlings administration, and some indeed have come of age. And I may be mentioned as one of these who could be given a chance to lead the NDC and Ghana in the right direction. Indeed, this may very well be the last chance for Ghana to be led by anyone who has the combination of what I said was Kwame Nkrumah's DNA and the anger that made President Rawlings and others rise up against their own leadership because of the prevailing corruption of the 1970s and early 80s. We certainly need new leadership to take the NDC and Ghana out of our current miasma of woes, trials, and tribulations. Let me come to another subject of the need to rebrand the NDC for 2020, given our sorrowful performance in the 2016 elections, and the fact that most students of politics agree that our party needs a comprehensive rebranding to win the 2020 presidential election. In fact, it is the NDC's own communicators who confess today that they cannot recollect what their party's message was during the 2016 election. And I believe one of the videos that may have been shown here before we started the program would have given you testimony about that fact. But many of our own NDC communicators from the 2016 period can even today, 18 months later, rattle off the slogans of our opponents, the NPD. So there's no doubt that effective and professional marketing and communication has been a major challenge to the NDC, and this fact needs now to take center stage in any serious comeback attempts by the party. And it is this realization that is causing many NDC foot soldiers and grassroots members to seek the leadership of an NDC flag bearer who just so happens to have practical, professional, proven capacity in branding, marketing, and communications. For many NDC leadership aspirants, the word rebranding may just be a word that they are also mouthing, but where they may not really have any practical knowledge and experience. But if you permit me to share with you the fact that at the age of 21, I had the privilege of working with Ghana's second largest advertising agency at the time, a company called Ghana Advertising and Marketing, where I acquired very important hands-on experience in branding and marketing. By dint of hard work and some will call precocious maturity, I rose to become a general manager of that company at the ripe old age of 24. The clients of the company at the time included such, I hope, well-known companies as Accra Brewery, whose club products I believe we all know, the cigarette products of then Pioneer Tobacco Company, 555 and the State Express, now have fallen out of favor, I'm sure. Firestone Tires, State Insurance Corporation, Alitalia, Lufthansa, Swiss Air, British Caledonian, now British Airways, Barclays Bank, Danafco, now Danex, Fan Milk, Fan Ice Cream, Union Carbide Batteries, and so many more were among the products, companies, and services that this company had to brand, market, and communicate in Ghana. Then I take us all to my graduate studies in the United States, graduating in 1979, and by dint of God's own intervention and the support of one of my friends here, getting employed by then the world's largest communications consultancy company called Hill & Knowlton, Our clients were no longer consumer products companies, but rather whole nations and some of the world's biggest banks. Now, these included then the largest bank in the world, called Crédit Agricole of France. The bank then called the Hong Kong Shanghai Banking Corporation, which today many people know as HSBC. A Dutch bank called Rabobank, Netherlands. The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, well known as OPEC, and the governments of Indonesia, Australia, the Netherlands, and Turkey. It was the combination of these very unusual and unique experiences for an African living in the United States in the 1980s that, I may confess, may have made me a highly desirable employee to a number of other institutions. The first of these to get me out of that company was the International Finance Corporation within the World Bank Group, where I got recruited and then later also appointed by the African Development Bank as head of communications in nearby Côte d'Ivoire, Abidjan. It is these same exceptional experiences for a young African that led then President Rawlings to invite me to leave the international organizations and to become a public servant to serve the people of Ghana. First in 1993, later in 1994, when I was made ambassador of Ghana to the United States, and later returned to assume duty as Minister of Communications of the Republic of Ghana. In that new position, I refer to the fact that President Rawlings charged me with the responsibility to get Ghanaians to accept the reintroduction of the value-added tax, VAT, which had been rejected by Ghanaians through demonstrations famously known as Kumi Prepo in 1995, which had led to the death of 4 people. President Rawlings had suspended the VAT in May 1995 because of the deaths. But in July 1997, he encouraged me to establish and chair a public education committee for the reintroduction of the value-added tax, VAT. This committee successfully convinced Ghanaians, especially the business community, of the merits of the VAT. And VAT was reintroduced in Ghana in December 1998. And I'm sure anybody who was old enough will remember that it was a peaceful reintroduction. There were no demonstrations, nobody died, because the people of Ghana had come to understand why the VAT was important for us. And I think we all know that the VAT has now been with us for some 20 years. And for good or evil, it is mobilizing billions of cedis every year for the national coffers to take care of our national needs. But the point I wish to make here for the benefit of the NDC delegates, because I told you before that they are the ones I'm addressing partly through this event, is that the same skill sets that the committee that I had the privilege to chair managed to convince Ghanaians within 18 months, mid-1997 to end of 1998, that the VAT that they had rejected in 1995 was actually a worthy financial instrument and that they should accept it, which they did. My point is that that same skill set of branding and rebranding, marketing and communications can also be put to the benefits of NDC if and when I become their flag bearer to convince the people of Ghana over at least an 18-month period to accept the NDC back in office in 2021, which was rejected in 2016. I hope somebody can make the connection. I'm sure it will be difficult for other NDC presidential aspirants to make similar claims. I think we've heard through the poetry that NDC is eager to appoint or to elect a flag bearer candidate who will not be tagged with allegations of corruption or who has not been involved in any scandals, financial malfeasance. I'm sure NDC delegates are eager to elect a flag bearer candidate who can be demonstrably shown to be competent. I have reason to believe that NDC delegates are looking for a flag bearer who has the requisite kinds of experiences. And you can see it from the broad range of occupations I've occupied. And also a flag bearer who can help to unite the party after what may become a fractious election process internally within the party. But after saying a few things for a while, let's also now come to a part where you can all participate. As part of rebranding and re-energizing, inspiring, reinvigorating the party, as I go around and speak to delegates, I've also created a number of slogans and songs. Because in fact, the NDC songwriter, Juwelaka, unfortunately passed away. And NDC is still looking for a new songwriter. So by default, I've become the NDC songwriter. So I'll encourage you to join me to sing one of the songs that I have invented, which helps NDC to feel better about itself. Because when you've lost an election, you get into depression, you get into all kinds of moods, you are afraid of your future. But if you look at what you've done, and you see that you've done some good things, and you can do better next time, it helps to ginger up party members. And also tell them that the Eyezu Eyeza, which you heard today, I don't know what it means. Someone asked them, what does it mean? Most people don't know what it means. Eyezu Eyeza, Zuzus are nice slogans, but not any real meaning. So I've invented some slogans. We'll practice them here as well. And some of you know about them already. Now, Dana says it's an easy song. So we can sing it together, right? Yes. It goes, Dana say, da NDC, right? Dana say, da NDC, second time. Dana say, da NDC, Every say, onimiyo, nani putu jumaso, edosu, Dana say, da NDC, So you see, I have a flag bearer who can compose songs for free. There are many other songs, but for the sake of today, let's go to just the slogan. We used to have a hey job, and I ask people that you are in a position you are saying a hey job, do you know what it means? But they are saying it all about the kind of hey job, meaning things are cool. Anytime you are hot, you are struggling. Say hey job, at all. In fact, nibi nyewa, So to change our slogans as part of the rebranding, we've invented the slogan. When I say NPP, you say one term, because that's all we are allowing them, right? Yes. Are we confused about that? No. Right. And when I say Akufo-Addo, you say one term. When I say NDC, you say we are coming back. Wambaeko, yes, I am back, right? NPP. One term. NPP. One term. Akufo-Addo. One term. Akufo-Addo. One term. NDC. We are coming back. NDC. We are coming back. NDC. Yes, very good. You are getting the spirit. Anybody who was sleeping, I'm sure, is waking up by now. So with those slogans, with these new songs, I pledge to work with all groups within and affiliated with NDC to build a solid party with innovative structures that will sustain our social democratic values. Along with other aspirants, we will pursue the principles of probity, integrity, and accountability, restore these values that shaped our people-centered orientation in the past, and which many of our people need again. And I believe with all this together, victory in 2020 will be our ultimate collective prize. You can clap your hands for yourselves for the victory that awaits us. For those former appointees of the most recent government, members of parliament, those who were fortunate to become chief executives of state enterprises, chairman of boards, let me assure them that the Spio presidency has no choice because the Constitution of Ghana requires every president to appoint the majority of his ministers from parliament. So I will appoint the majority of my ministers from parliament. So anybody who is in parliament now need not be afraid that under a Spio presidency, they do not qualify or may not merit an appointment. Those who merit it will receive suitable appointments, and so will many of the hundreds of other former appointees who, by the nature of are sometimes vicious and vindictive politics, may feel safer sitting on the fence to await the outcome And then they'll come and tell me how they've been supporting me for the last many months, and I wasn't aware. But for elected party officials, I think the party convention has been that they are not expected to endorse any candidate, so that the elections that we're going to have will be not just seen as free and fair, but will truly be free and fair. So if you don't see some national executives of our party and other office holders here, it's probably because most of them are trying hard to maintain that policy and practice. But for those who have not been watching and listening and understanding the recent developments within the NDC, let me bring this to your attention. But there's a strong wind of change blowing within the NDC, which eventually will pit maybe 1,000 or less former appointees against some 260,000 very unhappy, mostly angry and frustrated NDC foot soldiers and ordinary members who believe that they have not received what they consider to be their fair share of the cake of a party that has been in office for a cumulative 16 years. The demand for change by grassroots members of our party has actually led to the removal of most of the executives whose conduct was considered contributing to the party's abysmal failure in 2016 presidential elections and parliamentary elections for that matter, where we lost about 50 seats in parliament. So if you look at our branch elections, between 75 to 85% of the branch executives in 2016 are no longer there in most branches nationwide. Some hit 95 and 100%. If you look at our constituency elections, the same ratio occurred. Between 70 to 85% of our constituency executives are no longer in office. They've been voted out or they did not stand at all. At the regional elections, the same thing happened. And maybe for those who are not paying too much attention, that particular level may be something you may be aware of, because you heard or read about some 10 regional chairmen coming to sign a document sometime last year in support of somebody. I hope somebody heard about that. What happened to those 10 people? 8 of those former regional chairmen are not regional chairmen today. They either saw the tsunami coming and they dodged it by not standing for the elections at all, or those who stood actually were removed. And so we are going into the national secretariat elections, which is supposed to take place next month, with a similar situation. If you look at the national secretariat of the NDC today, there are very few people, probably just 5 or so people, who are trying to stay in the same positions. Majority have had to shift. Maybe to move from vice chairman to try and be a chairman, or to move from a vice chairman to be a national organizer. You need to move position. If you sit still, the tsunami will wipe you out for most of them. And that is the tsunami effect, which, by God's grace, my campaign team expects will also move up into the flag bearership race for delegates to feel comfortable in voting for Spio. Because when we go to meet NDC delegates, let's say this room is full of NDC delegates, the ones who are in office today. If I ask them how many of you have just been elected this year, about 80% will raise their hands, based on the ratios I've told you. So you ask them that, you yourself, who is new, if people wanted to keep the old executive, will you be here? And you say no. So if people thought that you need to be here to bring fresh blood, why is it that you are afraid to also create new blood at the higher level in the party? So the NDC electorate are beginning to appreciate that since they themselves, majority, are fresh blood, that fresh blood of renewal must continue all the way into the flag bearership race. Let me also charge NDC delegates not simply to vote for whoever, anybody that we may say we like. It is good to like any of us as aspirants, but it is not who NDC likes that is necessarily going to be liked by the people of Ghana. Because in 2016, we selected candidates that we thought we liked. as NDC, both for presidential and parliamentary, isn't it? They were selected by NDC. We like them. But the people of Ghana said that we don't like these people, at least to the same extent. So we are not going to vote for your presidential candidate, and we also will not vote for many of your parliamentary candidates. So the true test of the kind of person NDC electorate must vote for is a person who is likable and preferred by the majority of Ghanaians. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the question, how do you find out who most Ghanaians will vote for before an election? I know that in this part of the world, many people take recourse in some ways and means. They call it ways and means. Some will go to various fetishes. Some will go to imams, malams. Some will go to prophets. And that's okay, if that's what you believe in. But the white man who developed something called multi-party democracy and constitutions, what he does is to go for opinion polls. He does research. Have your faith, have your prophets, have your malams tell you what you want to hear. But test all of that with the electorate. The NDC must spend a little bit of money, minimum 10% of whatever we think we're going to spend on a national election. So let's just say NDC is going to spend, say, 10 million cedis on the whole 2020 election. Spend 10% of that testing the Ghanaian population with regards to who they would like to vote for and why. Because once you found out who the people of Ghana will vote for, it becomes easier for you to hopefully vote for that person. So the people of Ghana can vote for the same person. And the people of Ghana say they want this person and you go and bring somebody else, then you have to accept your responsibility for not listening to who the people of Ghana would like to vote for. And so that is one of the recommendations I make to our own party, especially those who are going to occupy positions of the National Secretariat. So the party doesn't waste and misuse its money. As I come to the conclusion of my address, I'd like to make a few comments about Ghana in the global community, and especially because of my faith in Ghana within Africa and the principles of Pan-Africanism that, as I said, was injected into my DNA during the Nkrumah era. I think most of us may be aware that Ghana actually is a small atom, an atom, in the global economy. Because Africa itself represents only 2%, the whole of Africa, 2% of global GDP, 2% of global trade, about 2% of global financial flows. Everything is almost 2%. And Ghana is only one of 50-something countries, and we are not even the biggest economy in Africa. So you can see how small we are as a fish swimming in a large pond with whales and sharks and other vicious animals who are all there to dominate the global economy. And I believe that is why many people believe that, notwithstanding the many skills one should have from the domestic point of view, and I think people have mentioned here the number of ministries I've worked for, etc. But others have taken note of the fact that I may be the only aspirant who, by God's grace, has worked with the four most important international organizations whose actions, decisions, and thoughts influence the development of smaller countries like Ghana. And you know the institutions, the United Nations, the World Bank Group, the Commonwealth of Nations, and the African Development Bank. So if any aspirant has not had prior experience working within some or most of these organizations, that person has a difficulty. They may not be aware of it, but they will have a difficulty because they don't have the insider knowledge of what happens in these institutions in order to sustain a country like Ghana, even with our plans for sustainable development goals. I believe that under better leadership, our country Ghana can make even greater progress in such areas as poverty reduction, illiteracy, infant mortality, basic education, good governance, with more effective governance institutions, better and longer-term economic and development planning, and hopefully with less corruption, Ghana to become the shining, shining black star of Africa. That was our promise at our birth in 1957. And I also pray that the new technologies that most of our youth have now become very familiar with, and even 2- and 3-year-old kids are playing with information and communication technologies, which for the first time in human history allow a 16-year-old young man or woman, boy or girl, to have as much access to knowledge as their 60-year-old parent or grandparent. Access to knowledge for the first time in human history. The networks of knowledge, our brains. And Ghana has an advantage over many other countries that we don't seem to recognize. I hope some of you read the recent survey and study that came out of the United States. Of all nationalities working in the United States, Ghanaians were ranked the most competent and the hardest working. Did some of you read that survey? So that is what we are doing in somebody else's country. And this is what we can do for ourselves, especially if we can harness our knowledge and network with the millions of Ghanaians in the diaspora. Some are in Australia, some are in Japan, some are in Korea, South Africa, Nigeria, who want to work, not necessarily physically come to Ghana. They just want their knowledge to be available to their own nationals, and sometimes we don't welcome them. We in Ghana must be able to measure more accurately how much of our gold, our manganese, our bauxite, our oil and gas is produced, how much is exported, how much we earn from it. And I can tell you, as a former Minister of Mines and Energy, as a former Minister of Trade and Industry, that these are facts that the government doesn't know. They don't have accurate information about it. Unless somebody come and tell me I'm lying. But most people in government will not say it. And it's not anybody's fault, it's all of us. We must work harder to have control and more effective management and knowledge of our own natural resources, which people are spiriting out of our nation every day, every month, and which keeps us poorer than we need to be. But unless you have the right leader who is willing to defend your national interest instead of his own personal and family interest, you will not get the benefit of the natural resources that we have. And I'm pledging to you as the kind of leader who will defend your national interest. Let me conclude. Ghana, I think we all agree, has great potential for rapid growth and development. Most Ghanaians point to the quality of our national leadership as contributing to unsatisfactory performances and outcomes. Ghanaians keep looking out for new and better leaders. And I'm sorry to say that even when they see somebody who could be a good leader, many of our colleagues and friends sit in their living rooms and say, oh, sir, I was programming, oh, and they just sit in their living rooms and they wish that I just become a leader. It's not going to happen like that. We need all of us to mobilize these people. The silent majority, those who are sitting in their offices, sitting in their cars, listening to the sound of my voice where they are, as we are streaming live on internet, Facebook, and on 1 or 2 radio stations, to come out of the woodworks and to support this forward agenda, which is aimed at taking hold of our nation and living up to the promise that our country had when our first illustrious president also left the United States, came to Ghana, and within a few years was able to find the secret of what Ghanaians were looking for. He also came and found so-called highly qualified people who belonged to then what is now NPP, wearing very big ties with all kinds of professions. He was not a particularly well-known personality. He could not mobilize lots of doctors and dentists to follow him. He had to use veranda boys and girls. Just as our own forward agenda movement may have to be relying on foot soldiers and enthusiastic young men and women. But he didn't give up. He knew he had a rendezvous with destiny. His aim was to give us political independence. And so, by just going around Ghana and doing the test, the audience survey that I kept talking about, what would you like for Ghana? People said, we want independence now. What kind of independence do you want? When do you want it? You want it now. His opponents were saying, we want independence in the shortest possible time, which nobody understood. What is shortest possible time? When is that? People are saying, we want independence now. As I said, shortest possible time. So who won that debate? So it wasn't just Nkrumah personally winning that debate. It was because Ghanaians wanted independence now. And he stood for independence now. Others stood for independence in the shortest possible time. So it was a contest of ideas. And today we are going to have that same contest of ideas. Those who want leaders that are not corrupt, who are competent, who are hardworking, who are efficient, who will sacrifice themselves, even sometimes their families, for the sake of the nation, versus any number of other leaders who are there for different reasons. So you decide which side of that fence you want to belong to. And I'd like to believe that those of you who are here because you want a certain kind of leadership. So I want to call today on all Ghanaian men and women of goodwill, both in Ghana and abroad, and our friends who are not Ghanaians, but who are living with us as well, and who have an interest in our destiny, not to simply sit still in their living rooms and in their wonderful cars and lament about the current difficult conditions in Ghana, but to come out and let's all do something about it. Yes, let's be citizens and not spectators, as our own president said at his inauguration. Let's bring NDC back. Let's give power to the grassroots. Let's take 2020 from the greedy and give power to the foot soldiers. Yes. Let the NDC tsunami drive away the past and herald in the new. Amen. Together we can make Ghana, the black star of Africa, shine again. Forward. NPP, 110. Akufo-Addo, 110. NDC, we are coming back. NDC. Yes. And it is Spio's time. When you ask, what time is it? What's the answer? It's Spio's time. What time is it? It's Spio's time. What time is it? It's Spio's time. It is Spio's time. NDC is coming back. NPP will give them one term. Thank you very much. And may God bless us all.